So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about the preparation process and prioritization, interviewing for new roles. Where we last left off in the previous video talking about LLMs and how I use that, I was like navigating the Sweet Compass. The other mental model that I've picked up on are these ideas of are these ideas that are naive, standard solutions, and kind of what that means. When we do our leak code stuff, we often consider like the brute force approach and like what makes it brute force. So I've kind of identified that generally means like processes are batch. They're as in like they're like one payload at a time. So let's see, um, one thing at a time, and so there's an aspect of time itself here. Time, and then we'll just put a line so it's a little bit easier to see. We'll just say end, right? So things are one at a time, batch, sequential, and things are good enough. Without getting into all this quite yet, right? If we keep going, let me do 5. I think 5 is okay. And once we get to the end, then we start the next process, and then we start continuing on. We get to the end, then we start the next one. Okay, so that's generally my understanding of sequential things. I think what gets interesting is when we start introducing async, or await. So if we continue on with this idea where we have 3 out of the 5, and then let's just say we kick off like another process here, and so as the next process has begun, maybe this keeps going until completion, and then great. So now both have completed, right? So I know there's like some logic control and conversations about async versus await, where you can have background jobs, and let's say the number 2 can start while it waits for the output of 1 to complete, right? So there's some like I understand those nuances that I'm going to try to keep this more conceptual. I just want to maybe introduce it to some people who might be interested, and just sharing what I've learned, and maybe diving deeper. Even I have to dive deeper into this stuff too. Because where I have been diving deeper more into the GPU stuff is like the idea of concurrency, and parallelization. So, my understanding with parallelization, unlike concurrency, because there's a difference. I also have to better understand the nuances, but unlike concurrency, where you are doing dual processes at once, so it's something like this, right? And then both processes go, I think. It's a better example if we have 4, I think. And then maybe different color. All right, so this is a better visual where let's just say then parallelization, let's say is like this first parallel process across both red ones, and then once it hits the end, then very similarly, then we kick off these processes, and then those go to the end, right? So 2 parallel processes going on once they're sequential. So with concurrency, my understanding is you'll then have, ideally, both of these parallelized processes, right? So parallelized 1 pair and parallelized 2 pair, both groups go all at once. What makes this interesting, and as a tidbit of knowledge, maybe be cool. As I've been going through and trying to understand GPU and parallelization, coalescing. I've been trying to better understand coalescing and what's going on in terms of the parallelizations going on the y-axis as opposed to just the x-axis. But yeah, that goes beyond the scope of where I'm trying to head or trying to discuss today about how this applies to the job prioritization in terms of async rotation. I just wanted to share this. I think it's cool. I think it's fun to talk about like this computer science concepts and then apply that to the real world because that's life, man. Try to learn process optimizations applied to real life because we spend all this time learning things. It'd be nice to use it for our own benefit. Okay, so this is just these are all like literally all my notes that I have like stored on my portfolio and the study plan as a Scala because it's a nice way to have some cloud storage, and maybe I can share these notes with people who are interested, and then probably do some live demos of like what I've done rather than doing like these pseudo animations. But let's see. So how this applies, I'm going to try to keep this to like 15 minutes, 15 to 20. I think that's fine. I don't want to go too long. 30 minutes is a lot. So we talked about the screening process. Unfortunately, this is YouTube, so people don't watch the previous videos. So I have to talk about, stateless videos and not having memory retention. I have to introduce this every time. So hold on. Okay, so the data viewing process is two parts. There's the outbound part where people are applying to jobs, and then there's the inbound part where recruiters find you on LinkedIn, and then they reach out. And I'm grouping that process as the recruiter stakeholder, like the screening process. And then, depending on the real world experiences that you have, sometimes with the recruiters, they will send you a take home after. Well, it depends on the process. I guess we'll go through the various we'll go through the various experiences that I've had. Okay, so let's start with this. So let's say outbound is, we'll say, like applying. Both need a resume. And then we'll just say inbound LinkedIn. Okay, so then they find you, and then you need a resume. You can have a general one, then try to ask them. Well, get a general one to get the conversation started. This has been my experience. If no job description, if they send the JD tailored, then maybe afterwards, ask for the JD to send the tailored one after, before, before it gets to the hiring manager. And this is important, actually. So what happens behind the scenes is you apply, or they find you. If you apply, you prepare a resume based on the job description, so you should be sending a tailored one. If they reach out to you, sometimes it is better to just send them a general one just to get the conversation started, and then ask them if there is a job description with more details so that you can send a tailored one, so that what the recruiter sends back to the hiring manager is what they see. The hiring manager can assess whether or not you're a good fit. Okay, so that's the screening process. And okay, so that's screening. This is important because once you get past the screening, then things get complicated. Okay, so let's say, what do you expect, right? Like after you get screened, I don't know either, right? So sometimes it's leak code. That's just a DSA or data structures and algorithms. Maybe it's hacker rank. Maybe it's coder pad. Those are big too, actually. Yeah. Okay. Right. So maybe it's a leak code thing. Maybe it's take home. What's a take home? It could be. It could be honestly, it could be anything. Like even Hacker Rank has some take homes that they make you do. Um, Actually, I will share this. I think one interesting interview prep book that I read was categorizing these as sync, peer to peer, and then async. Yeah. So this is kind of where the async stuff comes in, and I was talking about that earlier. So, maybe this will be a 30-minute video. Sorry. So, after you've done the screening, each company is different. You have to ask them about what their screening process is. You can try your best. This is what this video is going to try to be about. Like, how do you even prepare for these different areas and like across different like abstraction levels, which could be higher or could be lower. And I was not expecting my practical agentic debugging to be the lower level code. I thought that was going to be like a how do you prompt and like live debug things, and maybe we look at the logs. Like I was not expecting that at all. So I don't know. You can't really expect. You could try your best, but you're going to be put on the spot, and maybe that's what all this is. So you just try your best. So yeah, async is peer to peer. Not like this. Unfortunately, this is still async. But it's like you're there with the person on the scheduled meeting, and then you're like working together. That's peer to peer synchronous. Async is like this, where you're not together. You get a take home or some other assessment. I actually have times when I've done leak code or you've done your technical screening together, and as well as both async, right? So very rarely have I done a synchronous take home. It's mainly been synchronous, like code base, and not like data structures and algorithms in like the leak code sense, but like you're working together on the code base, like a real world example. Um, Otherwise, it's been more like you just talk about these things. So I think maybe that's the trickier part. Okay, so now this is the you've passed the screening. That's that debugging experience I was talking about. And then now let's just call this the technical, right? So this is your technical round. All right, so. All right. Preparing for the technical round is, I don't know, challenging because you don't know what to expect. So that is where you try to upfront your homework on data structures and algorithms, coding by hand. Unironically, like the last video I did for an hour, some of the technical rounds might not necessarily be code level implementation, right? Because what I'm hinting at is, I guess it's technically subgroups. But other quote unquote technical rounds could be system design. I've had various degrees of system design. I'm going to call this hypotheticals. I kind of hinted at this at the last video, but hypotheticals, are usually not like a system design. They're more like a open-ended question to gauge. I can't spell, and I don't have time. Right, and like honestly, that's really all this is. It's just seeing how you think. I want to see your thought process. So there's some frameworks to this. Maybe I don't know. Maybe there'll be a part 2 to this because this is already 15 minutes. And you know, this is. I'm trying my best to keep this at high level too. I spent a lot of time on this since I like maybe I'll do a series. There's some other external resources you can do too, but sharing my experience, I think it's also valid and important. Who knows? Maybe it might help other people. And then this is part of my portfolio too. There's been interviewers that actually see these videos. Maybe there's people who find this interesting. Maybe we can ask questions. We're all in this together. And this is a fun way for me to kind of have some sort of recreational outlet to share what I'm learning. Because I do think there is value in being able to discuss and share these things and then apply them professionally at work. Because as we grow more senior in our career, part of the unspoken expectation is that we start doing mentorship and upskilling across the organization, right? So that's kind of what this is as well. Okay, so 16 minutes. Yeah. Unless I get to the third part, I think this will be 30 minutes. Sorry, everybody. Hopefully this is helpful. And if not, then, well, you can watch somebody else's video. So this has been my experience with technical rounds. It really is just seeing how you think. It's hit or miss. Like, you can answer the question right. Maybe they don't like your answer. Maybe they don't like your approach. So it's like, dude, I don't know, man. It's like you just try your best. Yeah, so this has been my experience. I'm sharing all this because, like, in an upcoming video, I usually have, like, I try to finish this entire process, this screening, interview rounds. And interview rounds, could have a take home, pure coding. That's round 1, and then they could have a second round for system design. I had a round from a peer-to-peer behavioral, and then a fourth round. It wasn't like system design like in the last video. That's what that was. It was like a functional. They want to see like demonstratable presentation, but that was more of a hypothetical than it was like a system design thing. And for me, even the sub I don't know, domain for hypotheticals is grounding these things in pragmatism, hypothetical. You know what? I don't know, man. Like you get what I'm saying? It's like hypotheticals. Let's just talk about these things and just have a conversation, right? I don't like that. So like that's why I did my thing. This is a stateless video. People don't watch the previous one. So like my portfolio is like a whole zero cost end to end architecture and open source. So like we can't actually talk about these things because there is no NDA, there's no IP. Like this is why part of this whole process of understanding how the screening process works and the technical rounds is having something to show, and so that we can effectively talk about these things, and then it builds credibility and visibility with these things because like, dude, everybody's doing this like chat GPT, who knows, like if you're just reading off of prompts, and trust has really been eroded. So it's really more of a way to build credibility with the legitimacy of the work by having something grounded in pragmatic experiences. It is worth the time investment in my experience to have something to show in interviews. You can talk about hypotheticals because it's like open-ended books in school. They'll grill you, they will roast you, they'll ask you fundamental questions, and if you don't know them, then you just don't know them, and they'll like keep asking you questions, and they'll know if you're using AI. So that's just been my experience. You talk to somebody, and then you genuinely know if they're legit or not. And then, like with my most recent interview, they'll just bring you on site. So great. That's why I made that 1 hour video, because they asked me to go on site to do a 1 hour video or 1 hour presentation. So there's no way I have like AI to cheat with that. So okay, so that's what this is. So this has generally been my experience. Just try to close up in 10 minutes here. Yeah, you get to the screening, and then you're actively interviewing now, right? So I can't think of any other like variant of the technical rounds that I've had. It's just been more like one of these, and then like 4 rounds of them, and then once you get past these technical conversations, then you just kind of wait for the hiring manager, and at that point we like the behavioral stuff. And then hopefully you get an offer. I haven't gotten to that point. I have met with like you do meet with them up front, and then I've gone to the final round several times, and you're just not selected. So who knows? But maybe that's a good sign, right? Then I can share like I've made it to the final rounds a few times now, and throughout that entire experience, they vary in the, we'll say, number of steps, right? So for contract roles, it's been my experience that it's usually a faster onboarding. And fair play, like contracts are usually like a year to year anyway. And like, look, I'm trying to job hop like 2 to 3 years maybe. If I'm like not really feeling the role, if I do look for a permanent role, I have different criteria for where I see myself there for 3 to 5 years, maybe. And if I really like the team, which I am not currently, like maybe I think about 5 to 7. But we are trying to get to a competitive pay salary and upskill in our growth in order to have, try to live below our means and a cost of living that's reasonable. So that's, really the aim here is like try to enjoy the journey of life while you can. But, like be paid what you're worth and be competitive with the market, right? So like otherwise you have to like deal with all this interviewing process. And it's like, oh my God, remember like in 2020, it was like everybody's job hopping and like all this. Okay, well, like now it's like more challenging. So for all these other various reasons. All right, that was a mini rant. Sorry. Like this interviewing is a skill in and of itself. This is just sharing like what I've been experiencing with like the AI market nowadays. Less traditional leak coding, and remember that was from Google. So now, I guess people have picked up that there's more value in like the synchronous peer-to-peer. I've actually noticed more of that than like asynchronous leak coding things. I will share one interview process was still traditionally synchronous leak coding, as opposed to synchronous code-based debugging and working on like real code. Then system design is like your scala draw stuff where you sketch things out. Otherwise, it's been my other experience where rather than a system design where you're sketching things out, you can ask them, which I did in my previous interview, where like, would you like me to just talk at you? Like the hypothetical conversation about system design and how you would approach and design a system that scales to, let's say, 1 million users, right? So that's an interesting question, but I don't have time for that because the main takeaway for a question like that I recognize is it's not just about the technology. I think this is where my changelog thing comes in, because one of the interesting things that I've picked up on from interviewing other people was like this concept of AI growth. I was like, what is that? And so they got to help me understand. It's like, you can design like some system that supports this amazing technology, but then nobody wants to use it. So like, what's the point? So that was the main takeaway with that question. And so that was my twist on that. Again, still waiting to hear back. Hopefully I get that job. And if not, then, like this is all just sharing my experience and knowledge and hopefully to help somebody get a job because, I'm trying my best to. Okay. So in the last 5 minutes of this, there's really nothing else, right? So either you get through the process and you get to the final stages of the hiring manager and you have a behavioral thing. I don't know. The behavioral stuff, just be yourself, be genuine, or not, and then just do it for the paycheck. You can do that too. That's fine. That's totally valid. Um, you are kind of switching it between these two processes, like the square examples where I was at earlier. As you schedule in more screenings, you might have ongoing interview processes. So now let me expand this, because now this is where this could have been a 5-minute video. Okay, screening. All right, here we go. So here's where I'm gonna try to speed run this video animation here. Okay, so let's say company A. Let's do numbers, makes things easier. All right, here we go. So we got 3 minutes, and then I'll wrap up. So we got company one. Company one wants to screen you, but then maybe you start applying the things. You meet with another recruiter on day. This is a little small. Oh God, this is terrible. Let me do this again. All right, so recruiters reach out to you. You on LinkedIn. Maybe you apply. Okay, it's been my experience. I've been pretty good about having like 3 inbound leads with recruiters, right? So company one, you meet with the recruiter, and then they pass you to the hiring manager. Well, I guess technically we're over here. So okay, and so then maybe company two, the recruiter meets with you. They send you to the hiring manager. Hiring manager likes you. You go through the technical round, and then maybe company two, they don't like you, but then company three does, and then you go to the hiring manager. You get screened out from the recruiter, right? Like maybe this happens. So then let's say hiring manager, but hiring manager's like, they don't like you, but it's okay. But then company one, you move forward. You move forward throughout the process, and then you go through your technical rounds. Let's say it's the standard. Let's say it's you get a take home. Then let's say you get a data structures and algorithms. Let's say you get peer-to-peer DSA. This has happened to me actually. So this is unfortunately this is real life experience. Peer-to-peer DSA, and then let's just throw in, you do a presentation. Maybe they ask you to do a presentation. Sure, like that was new. It's like that sucks, but okay. So then you do a presentation, and then let's say then they ask you to do. Oh, great. Let's remember that it's a presentation. Let's do follow-ups. And deep dives, because that's what that was. Oh, but then by the way, there's 4 people in the company, so they want you to do this many. Okay, so yeah, let's do that, and then maybe they want to do another system design. Sure, yeah, let's do that. System design. Oh, but is it a SWE system design or is it machine learning one? I don't know. Let's find out. That's different. Let's see. What's the other one? The hypotheticals. Yeah. So maybe they do hypotheticals. Okay. Maybe they just want to talk to you. After all of this, maybe they just want to talk to you. All right. Oh, wait. The behavior. Sometimes I get this up front. Like sometimes it's been over here. Sometimes let's just keep this to for time. Okay. I'm already going over time because I forgot about all this good stuff. I forgot about system design for SWE versus machine learning. Man, that's a whole video in of itself. Good times. Okay. So anyway, maybe in the next video. All right. You get the point here. So we're trying to do the 1% conversion here. We have, hey, think about it. We're engineers, right? So this was the first batch. So, you know what? Let's just start the next batch, right? let's just start the next batch of like, recruiter inbound leads, right? So, hey, so as we're doing the technical rounds and then we're going through it, we do the DSA, we do the peer to peer. We're scheduling the next. Maybe we get lucky, right? Maybe we get. Hold on, let me get this. I think this is hilarious. Maybe they all like us. Maybe then we start doing take homes. Like, oh shit, now we have to do like 3 take homes at once while we're like interviewing with company one. That we got to do the presentation to prepare for that. So here's the thing, because we have an aspect of time here, don't do what I did. You schedule all of these. Let's say, okay, so like all of these take homes like the next day. You like day after day. Like give yourself every other day. This is really the main takeaway in this video after 30 minutes of ranting and like introducing and sharing all of this like experiences that I've had. Because look, man, maybe you do the take home. It's been my experience. I've been consistently getting through take homes, right? Like I usually get to the point where some interviews where you do the take home, there is not a DSA. You actually go to, I've had an interview where they made me go through the behavioral first and then continue, and then I actually got to peer-to-peer DSA. All right, so I got to here, and then they ghosted me. Okay, so then I've had other companies where this one, like I was hinting at, like the presentation, which was like a combination of actually all of this and a little bit of that, but it's more like this. And then there's been some companies where it's like async. Data structures and algorithm. It's not peer-to-peer, it's async, right? So it's kind of like a take-home. I guess it's technically like this. Okay, so here's like your Gantt chart. All right, this is what this is basically. So after 30 minutes of ranting and introducing this concept of parallelism and concurrency is applied to the screening, technical rounds, and then hopefully to the offer. I learned the hard way. I try to batch things every 2 weeks. Try to keep things no more than, let's say, 3 in the process. I would consider anything after like the screening, like in the process. That's been like a pretty good rule of thumb. So like I don't get burned out. So I then I try to close out these rounds while I start ramping up the next round. Because if we think about it async wise, right, like that, this is like one unit. So if this is the first batch, like let's think about this for a moment, right? Like what I've been doing is I've been taking this batch, and by the time, I start closing out this process, I'm screening in the next round of recruiters, maybe somewhere around somewhere around here actually. Yeah. So okay, so what I mean by this, right? We'll end on this because this is the whole main takeaway. Is listen, this is the first round. Okay, let's do this. This is the first round. In this first round or batch, I'm taking 3 inbound recruiters and processing which one I get past the screening. This red line, a little small, sorry. And then, hey, I got one in the process. Let me start inbounding 3 more recruiters and see if I can like get past like the in process to the technical runs for these other companies, and I'll schedule them like a week out from one another, or maybe every other day, like depending on what's needed. It depends on like the patch scheduling. If they schedule all 4 on the same day, then SOL, good luck. Like try to schedule the next batch like after a day of rest or something, or pace yourself with like the little bits each time. Like my upcoming interview that I have, they're scheduling it like one day after one another. That's what I mean by this. Okay, so you get in the process of screening, you do like your take home, your DSA, you're waiting to hear back. Realistically, you're probably not moving on. Let's be real here about this. Then you start, as you finish, let's say your final rounds, you got to start ramping up the next batch of recruiter leads here, right? So that's what this is. Then you start doing the same thing over and over. You do this for a year. You just keep going. You just keep getting good at it, And then eventually, hopefully, you get a job. And this is what I've been doing with prioritization and understanding optimized solutions about asynchronization and concurrency. So that's the main takeaway applied to the job search. Maybe I will do an interesting conversation about this stuff. People aren't commenting on the video, so I don't know what people want to hear. So I'm taking the free liberty to share what I think is interesting and taking these lessons learned, abstracted away from these mental models, right? Taking things that are sequential, understanding asynchronicity and high throughput processes for concurrency, and applying them to the job market. Because I think it's really interesting having, I guess, better process engineer and understanding Gantt charts and project management a little bit, scheduling, scoping, and doing this conceptual work applied to the job market and not just coding.